the theme of the gathering is, what are you looking for? And I thought, well, how does that fit into what are you looking for? And then it suddenly struck me that most people, I think in most parts of the world, if you were to ask them, what kind of world do you want for your children and your grandchildren? They would say, a world in peace, right? We want peace. We want a world in peace. This is what people have always said. We always say that we're looking for peace. We want peace. We want an end to conflict. We want an end to violence in our own societies, in the world. And yet, we don't ever seem to get there. One of the things that attracts me so much to Krishnamurti's teachings, and it's, Yap, what you were referring to also, is that he looks at both the outer world, what we see, but also the inner world. He understands that connection. And he understands the fact that reality, in fact, is seamless, right? You can't say there's an inner, humans think one thing, but nations act another way, or there's no real distinctions. There's no real distinction there. We are the world, right? We are, when nations act, when people kill on behalf of religion, that's us. That's us. He said, the causes of war are created by you and me. War is the spectacular expression of our daily existence, is it not? We identify ourselves with a particular group, national, religious, or racial, because it gives us a sense of power. And power inevitably brings about catastrophe. You and I are responsible for war, not Hitler, Stalin, or some other super leader.
Growing up in Rishi Valley from class 7 to class 12, I remember December, January was an exciting time, a particularly exciting time to be there, because that's when Krishnamurti would visit, as he did all the years I was there at school. And during his visits, he'd give talks to the students. And I have to admit, as a 12 or 13-year-old, or even as a 17-year-old, I wasn't one of the most receptive listeners, and I'm not sure how much I absorbed. But I know that some things made an impact on me, and what made an impact on me, I think, was some of the metaphors that he used. In one of the first talks I listened to, I remember he said something like, we all build walls around ourselves, and because of that, we never really come into contact with other people. At the time I heard him say it, it was for me a very literal statement. And I actually remember visualizing people walking around with these sort of balloon-like walls that collided with each other and made it impossible for them to connect. Even at the time, I thought there was maybe something a little nonsensical in the way I was understanding the metaphor, taking it so literally. But now I wonder, maybe there's some truth to it. And I find even now, 40 years later, when I read Krishnamurti or listen to him, what often speaks to me the most directly is some of the metaphors he uses. This whole question of what is it to understand Krishnamurti, or to understand anything really, is, I think, the concern I have which underlies this whole presentation. We have a very strong sense of self. There's this very strong sense that there's what's inside and there's everything else that's outside. So I find Krishnamurti implicitly addressing this as well in one section of the poem. I have no name. I am as the fresh breeze of the mountains. I have no shelter. I am as the wandering waters. I have no sacred books, nor am I well seasoned in tradition. I am not bound by theories, nor corrupted by beliefs. I am not held in the bondage of religions. My song is the song of the river calling for the open seas. Wandering, wandering, I am life.
So I'd like to begin by pointing out what seems to me one of the most outstanding characteristics of Krishnamurti's teachings, and that is his work is very, very original. It's highly original in its overall scope and content, as well as in a great many of the more detailed observations. And as a result, his work cannot really be categorized as belonging to any pre-existing tradition or academic discipline or religion or any other school of thought. And one of the features of his originality lies in the rejection of any kind of method for purposes of self-understanding or meditation or psychological transformation. And his rejection of method was not simply a casual or incidental feature of his philosophy. It was something carefully considered and central, integral to the whole meaning and structure of his work. So we can't really understand the substance, the content of his teachings, unless we also understand what he had to say about methods and why he felt that any method is counterproductive and actively interferes with understanding oneself. On the other hand, Krishnamurti did recommend a certain approach, certain activities or processes that he felt were conducive to learning about oneself. So in this talk, we'll explore the nature of these activities and see how to distinguish them from any kind of method or systematic practice.
So it's a great joy for me to express my understanding of the teachings and also express what we've been doing here at the school with the children, with the parents and teachers. And so why are we here? Why are we here at the school, and why are we here today paying attention to the teachings of Krishnamurti? Well, we recognize that there is something that we need to know, feel, become as a society. And this teacher has left us a bolt of wisdom that we can inquire, discover, and like David Moody was saying before, practice for ourselves, be the teaching.
While most of us may not consider discontentment a positive thing, Krishnamurti called it the flame of inquiry, something that drives, creates, and urges us on, plunging us into the unknown. This is what keeps the mind young. But what does he mean by a young mind, and is it possible to keep the mind young when one continues to smother this flame with satisfaction and the search for psychological security? This flame of discontent seems to point to the quality of mind that is fresh. It's constantly inquiring, and it doesn't easily accept words or explanations. Krishnamurti suggested that deep attention, which involves all your senses and care, is the flame.
I just try to anticipate, just to imagine the kind of questions that you might have, or the kind of questions that are recurring over the years. And the one question that always comes up, how can there be a Krishnamurti organization? Well, Krishnamurti was against organizations. And you know, in 29 he was pretty clear about it, that there's no organization that can lead you to truth. That's why we always have the clause, nobody in the organization or in the board or something is pretending that they know what Krishnamurti says. And the organization is also not operating. It's really a service that we're offering for the world. I mean, now we're in the digital realms, so much in the digital realm. The work is now being, everything we do is worldwide.
So the Measurable is an umbrella project that has this mission statement, which is, so the different parts is, there's a website, there's a podcast, there are short videos, but they are all aimed for a young audience that is we're trying to create bridges that relate more to the content that is expressed in the teachings than the man himself or people that already know about Krishnamurti. So it's very important for us to see what is relevant for this generation and then what can we put out there and in which format for people to feel that they resonate with it, and then they start their own investigation.